Hello, and welcome back to Redefine Parenting. I am Veenu Keller, your host, and I want to welcome you to Spanglish World Network and H.E.R Network on Zingo TV, channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both Zingo TV app on respective app stores and iOS and Android devices. While you download, be sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Roku Sticks, and all smart TVs 216 and forward. I am so excited to have my special guest today, Jacinda, because her and I had connected through a personal friend of mine, her family member, and I was having some challenges with my twins getting along, and there was so much bickering and fighting. And some of you that have listened to my show before know that I have a theme in my house, and it's called love and kindness. And that is our theme. And I have tried so many times, like when they're at it, to say, okay, remember, is this love and kindness? And they'll both say no. And then they go back into really wanting that control, want to be who's in charge. They get really competitive. So I'm sure some of you listeners out there can definitely relate to what I'm talking about. So when I was talking to my friend, she was like, oh, well, my niece, Jacinda, she does, this thing where if, one is doing something, the other one has to do random act of kindness. And I'm going to let her go into it more detail. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. So I started to do that. And all of a sudden I was having more peace in my home. So I immediately was like, okay, I have got to have this woman on my podcast because the way that she parents is so natural. And I don't even think it's from books or anything. So without further ado, let me introduce my special guest, Jacinda. Welcome to Redefine Parenting.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So just tell us a little bit about you, how many kids you have, and if you're a stay-at-home mom, working mom, just kind of give us a little gist about your life, the ice through you.
Yeah, so it's a good question. I'm a stay-at-home mom and a working mom. When I was pregnant with my daughter, my first child, I decided to go into an industry that I could actually work from home at the same time because I wanted to be home with my kids. So there's challenges that come with that. I'm actually a loan officer. I do home mortgages. And literally there are times where I'd be nursing my daughter while trying to take out a loan application, hoping they didn't cry, so my kids have definitely grown up around me and around my business and trying to maintain both. I own a mortgage brokerage as well. I've got 50 loan officers that are on board with me, and in addition to my own book of business. So
wow.
There have been times in my life where I've worked 80 hours a week. Not that I keep thinking it was going to get better. And so I had to actually implement some things to kind of bring me back to some balance. And that's a whole nother story. But so at this point, that little baby that I was pregnant with, she's 16 years old now. And for the next at least a couple of weeks, all my kids are 3 years apart. So I've got a daughter who's 16, right in the middle of the teenage years. And I have a son who is 13, another son who is 10, and a daughter who is 7, who'll be turning 8 at the end of this month. So I kind of got the spectrum. And like I said, I've actually worked out of my home my entire career. So I've been home with my kids until they've gone to school. And, you really have to find some ways to make those things work because you have to be able to work too. So
Yes. Well, that is a busy life. And I too am the stay-home working mom too, because I work out of my home and then my kids are here. And, I'm blessed to have my husband who, shares that responsibility with the kids too. So he's kind of the Mr. Mom with me. So that really lets off my stress. So, one of the reasons, and you heard me say, is that, your aunt actually introduced me to some of your techniques. And I was like, wow, like, how does she learn this stuff? And she's like, I don't know. But, she just has an amazing belief about her kids. She really knows how to communicate with them well. And, you make the expectations really viable for your kids. Like they know what your expectations are. So let's just start out with that. So like, what are your beliefs about parenting?
It's really hard to kind of put that in a way to make it simple, but I actually feel like, when we have our first baby, we're kind of doing a disservice because that baby comes into our lives and everything for this baby, everything, right? It's 100% dependent on us. And so I think our first introduction into parenthood is doing everything for your child. You then have to realize that there's a transition that happens where you are no longer doing everything for your child. And I almost feel like they have to attach to the word parenting the word coach. And when that baby is probably 2 years old, even one, like as soon as they can start doing things on their own, that's when that transition starts happening. Right from the, like at a very young age, your job then is no longer parenting in the fact that you're doing everything for that child, but parenting in the fact that you're a coach now and you're trying to teach that child to do everything for themselves. And I don't feel like there's ever a time where you like someone says, okay, now it's time to be a coach instead of a parent. You know what I mean? And so a lot of times they just continue to do the parenting that they were introduced to, where they did everything for the child. And I think that's kind of where, right, that sort of crux of a lot of the problems come from, is because I'm a huge, huge proponent of self-reliance. I want my child to do as much as they can for themselves as soon as they can for themselves. And being an active parent, it's a lot of focus and it does take a lot of time, but it saves you 50 million times more time down the road if you just do it up front. So like even at the age of 2, I mean, my kids are doing chores, they're unloading the dishwasher, they're helping with dinner, they pour, they can pour in the macaroni and cheese, or they can help, fill up the water pot. We take it to the stove. Like they're constantly, there's always looking for that opportunity as a coach to then teach your child. So I feel like, as a coach, you also realize that if you have a team of players, every player is different and every player needs a different type of coaching. So it's not about being fair. Well, I should say it's not about being equal. It's about being fair, but it's not about being equal, because equal,
I like that.
And so you parent, some kids may get a different type of parenting than another child because they're a different type of needs. And so I, as a coach, like your coach never has like, okay, here's the play we run every single time, right? No, every situation requires a different type of play. So as a parent / coach, you then have to have a playbook, right? You always have like, okay, well, this is a situation where I can tell my kid doesn't need discipline. They actually can tell that their love tank's a little low. So right now is not the time to like, okay, you should be doing this and this should do this. It's like, you know what? Come here. Let's give you a hug. I'm going to tell you everything about you that I love. I'm going to tell you, like it's about recognizing what that need is in that moment. And it's not like, well, the rule is that we have to now go in timeout and now we do this. It's recognizing what play is necessary in that moment. And so having a bunch of plays in your book to help you with whatever situation is what your job as a parent is to be, and listening to people like you that, hey, here's a play, here's a play, here's a play, and then seeing the opportunity to use it.
Right. So there's a couple of things that you hit on. Like one of the things that I love that you said, and that's why my channel is called Redefine Parenting, is that we have to redefine it, because there were so many like books that came out. Like I remember like when I was like a baby born in the 70s, like I think that Dr. Spock had a book on parenting. Everybody's like, oh, this is the right way to do parenting. And one of the things that you just hit on was that every child is different and every child has a different need. It's not about equal. It's about, being fair. Fair to them, though, not even fair to the siblings. It's fair to them. What do they need? Yeah. And that is why, like, we have so many labels on our kids already. And now we put so many labels on how we're going to be the right parent, conscious parent, mindful parent, helicopter parent. And I always say, let's take off the labels and let's just be the parent our child needs us to be. And I like how you differentiated the coach from the parent, because I think the coaching style of the parent, right, is the one that allows them to guide them versus saying you have to do it this way. It must be done this way. It's a guide. It's asking questions for them to get them curious, not critical about what they're doing. And, I love that you bring that in, because there's so many, when we set these expectations, like clean your room, and then an hour later they come out and we're looking at their room not being really clean. And they're like so proud of themselves. And I used to say, this is not clean. Like I would criticize. Instead, now I go into curiosity and be like, what about your room is clean to you? What are you so proud of? And they're like, look at my shoes. Look at my shoes. Aren't they great? And in their mind, that was clean. That was what was messy to them, because I was not clear in my instructions and I left it up to them. So it's And then I celebrate that. And then we go on to what else can look that way, right? What else can look as organized as your shoes at this point? So I really love that aspect of, the parent versus the coach. What do you feel? Because I'm the same way. Like, I have three things that I want to raise my kids. I want my kids to be happy, I want them to be healthy, and I want them to be independent. Those are the three things that, is my end result for my children. And so, like you, I want to create that independence. I want to give them opportunity to do chores, not just to create that independence, but to create their self-worth. When that you're worthy of doing this chore, you're worth helping out in the family, and you're worth, like, I know when I make a great meal for my family and they love it, how great I feel that I was able to provide this great meal that I cooked for them. So how could we give our kids that same self-worth, that they were able to do something so great that led to the family? But I'm curious with you, Jacinda, when you say parent versus coach, what do you feel like a parent is versus what a coach is when we are parenting?
Well, I think a parent, like I said, sometimes our introduction to parenthood kind of does us a disservice. And a lot of times we kind of want to protect, and we want to, ooh, are they ready for this? Right. Where a coach is like, hey, we are here to develop them. And you're a little more aggressive with maybe what you wouldn't think they could do. And I feel like your kids live up or down, obviously, to your expectations of them. So let me give you an example. We just went on an Alaska cruise. We just got back last week. And my daughter, who's 7, she was supposed to meet some people up at the Lido deck to go swimming. And she's like, Mom, can you take me? And I'm like, oh my goodness, Chris, you're almost 8 years old. You should be able to navigate this ship on your own. You don't need me to show you how to get there. You know what I mean? And she's like, oh, Mom, please, can you just take me? And I'm like, no, you are old enough to do this on your own. And we kind of went through and just like went through how the ship worked and like where to go and how to go up in the elevators. And she was so proud of herself being able to navigate the ship all week long. You know what I mean? Which this is something she was begging not to do, right? But once she understood it and she could do it on her own, she absolutely felt so much confidence, so good about herself. Like she could take her other cousin who's younger and like, hey, we can go down to my room, you know what I mean? Everything. So I think we tend to like hold back and miss opportunities as a parent. As a coach, you kind of have a different mindset. And so like, I know that, by the time my kids are 5, their job is, they will get themselves out of bed for school. Like I do not wake them up. They need to know they can get out of bed. They can get themselves to school. They always make their own breakfast. They always make their own lunches. Now, my kids don't typically like cereal, so they will make themselves a big breakfast. They'll make an omelet. They'll make skillets. They'll make pancakes. They'll make whatever. So, my 5-year-old, every one of my 5-year-olds could make eggs. They can make some simple breakfast. Well, I call simple, but they can navigate the stove. They can do the whole thing on their own. And they have to plan for enough time to be able to do all those things and still get ready and be to school on time. So that's time management. That's helping them learn how to cook. My one daughter was like, Mom, I'm the only one of 2 people that their moms don't make their lunches. And I'm like, aren't you so glad that you have a mom that allows you to be able to, you know what I mean? Like, it's not, and I'm like, I think we miss opportunities. And I think do more than you think they can. And it's okay if you may sit at a bar and they may not be able to hit it, but even if they came up so much more, that's fine. You know what I mean? They're still learning, they're progressing. So I think it's, I think a big difference if you just have a coach mindset is seeing the opportunities that come.
Wow, I love it. And, there's a couple of things that you brought that was so nostalgic for me. I remember going on a cruise when I was in 5th grade with my mom, and because she had just finished law school, she was getting ready to take the bar exam. So she was like going to take us on this cruise. And I was doing the whole shit by myself. Like I was going to the disco. I was going to the casino. Like I was just like on my own, doing my own thing. I was like enrolling myself in the costume contest, and my mom was like, I was like, Mom, I got to have this like paper. I'm going to make myself to be a dice. And she's like, what are you doing? And I won like 2nd place. And she was like, my mom had no idea what I was doing, but she trusted me to just have a good time, which allowed her to have a good time, and then and you just changed a meaning for me. And so thank you for that. So my mom was a single mom working 2 jobs, putting herself to law school. So I made my own breakfast. I made my own lunch. And I would not make lunch. Like I'd be there looking at people going, oh, can I have a piece of that? Because I was hungry because I did not make my lunch. But my mom didn't either. And she would make dinner and I had to microwave it because she would be at law school. And so, and this was starting like when I was like 7 years old. And I just realized that that's probably why I'm still a go-getter and I just do things on my own and I forget to ask permission. I just go and do because of the skills that I learned. Like I was cleaning the house, vacuuming, cleaning bathrooms, doing laundry by 7 years old. Like that was the chore. And my mom says, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm at work. I'm at law school. This is what you and your brother need to do. And there was no question about it. We just were able to do it. And I just lost her. So I'm just going to continue with this. Oh, there she is. Okay. So, so I was able to learn those independent skills. And so I think what you're doing is amazing. And, someone just commented that their mom was just like that, that everybody helped with chores. And I think we've gone into, when we look at the different generations, like the millennials, a lot of them, I know for a fact, I did this too, was that I gave them everything. Like I didn't give them a lot of chores because I felt bad that I had all the chores. Like I tried to overcompensate for what I thought was a punishment. And yet my kids know how to do the dishes. They know how to clean a bathroom. They know how to do everything because it got to that point where I have, you guys got to be independent. And now my older kids that are 28 and 23, they live on their own. They have clean houses. They know how to do their laundry and they have an expectation of cleanliness too. So I definitely think that is so beautiful in what you're saying. Cause I think even now people are not letting their kids get up when they fall. They're picking their kids up. Not everyone, but there's a lot of people out there that are doing that.
Well, and I think so. Like I grew up very, very, very poor circumstances. There was 7 kids in my family, and but I look at the end result of that 7 kids, and 6 of the 7 of us make over 6 figures a year, right? Every one of us, we're super successful, and I think, okay, so I have been very, very conscious on what I wanted as an outcome for my kids right from the beginning, and we've got to a point where we're very affluent now, and I constantly am checking with myself because I'm like, I do not want to produce children that go out into this world as entitled people.
Right.
That's kind of like my hot button for me. So a lot of what I filter and a lot of what I do is thinking, okay, am I producing an entitled child? I mean, that's honestly like how I'm kind of sorting things through. And I look back at my childhood and I 100% knew that if I wanted anything in this life, I would have to go get it. There was never a safety net. There was never going to be help coming from my parents financially on anything. I didn't even know that parents actually paid for weddings. That was a total foreign concept. I didn't even know that existed. I didn't know that parents paid for college. That's another thing that I didn't even know that was something that people did for their kids. But that said, when I'm looking at what my plan is for my kids, I'm always looking at entitlement, and I don't feel like growing up and doing chores and having to do things for yourself and go out and earn money, you know what I mean, is a bad thing. I feel like that's what teaches you about life. Like you're in a training room right now before you go out to the real world. And if you don't train them in the training room, it's going to be really rough out there in the real world. So
absolutely.
I was on that cruise with my husband's family, and his cousin was asking about, do I pay my kids allowance? And I said, you know what, I have thought so long and hard about this. And I can tell you what I've come up with, like for myself, and what I feel like is right for my kids, which is I don't pay my kids allowance. I don't pay them. I don't feel like they should ever get money for free. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, they do chores. And I'm like, I want my kids to know that there is a community out there, and you're not always going to get paid for everything you do in the community. We are as a family unit, and we work with the family to make us successful. And I think the things they do around the house is part of being part of the family.
No, I
that
love
is
it.
not something I'm going to pay you for. And she's like, well, I mean, what about like when we're in these ports and they want a souvenir? And I said, you know what? I did. I said, hey guys, I'll let you pick out a souvenir as long as it's not something junky that I want to show, throw away as soon as we get home. I don't want any knickknack. A useful souvenir. I'm gonna go ahead and allow you to buy one, and I'll pay for one. And I said, let me tell you what. Every one of my kids were extremely grateful. They were just, wow, oh my goodness, thank you, Mom. Like, oh, they were just so over the top grateful for being able to pick out a souvenir that I was going to pay for. And I said, how often has Spencer thanked you for his allowance? Is he over the top grateful every time you give your allowance? Because now he has money to buy that souvenir, but he feels like that money is his. You know what I mean? It wasn't a gift. And I feel like she's like, well, how are they going to go out and earn money? I'm like, the same way I had to figure out how to go out and earn money. You know what I mean? Like you have to go out and figure out a babysitting job, or you go out and pull reeds for your neighbors. It's not fun, but that value of that dollar means something to them. And I'm like, but you know what? I am not Spencer's mom. I have no idea what's good for Spencer.
Right.
You are probably doing the absolute best thing for Spencer. And that is absolutely going to teach him exactly what you want to teach him. So I'm not saying there's a right answer to this at all. I'm just telling you what I came up with and why.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And I think that is so great. So great. So I'm going to segue into what our topic actually is, sibling rivalry. And the reason why, because I follow one of your techniques and it's worked brilliant. And, but I wanted people to understand your beliefs, because I think it's a great segue into what you do with your kids and the why behind it. And so I'm going to let you share about the whole acts of random kindness to get your kids to get along, and maybe some other things that you believe about why kids fight or why they don't get along, and maybe some other strategies that you've used that I could take some notes on too.
So what you're talking about, I came up with on the spot because my youngest daughter is going to be my hard one. She's I'm glad she's my caboose because I can use all my parenting skills on her. But I think her personality itself is one that she just likes to be in control of everything. It's not necessarily like you just have those personalities that like to be in control.
Right.
And she's also more selfish than the rest of my kids. So her most closest sibling is my 10-year-old boy. And so she tries to control him whenever she gets an opportunity. And anyway, so I just noticed, like, I feel like they were fighting a lot, and I hate having contention in my home. It's something that really bothers me. And so they were fighting, and I just said, Carissa, because again, I noticed it's becoming out of selfishness that she was doing things. And so again, it's identifying the root cause of where's the contention coming from. And so I said, Carissa, and Tristan, because he participates in the fighting. I said, listen, every time you guys are fighting, you guys then have to do some acts of kindness. So it's not so much service, but acts of kindness. It could even just be allowing them to go through the door first, because that's something they fight about. I don't know why, but they do. You know what I mean? Like, she just tries to get in front of them. You know what I mean? And it just bugs him, right? So then she allows them to go in the door first. Like, that's thinking of someone else other. I just wanted to retrain their brain and have them focus on something that, like, I want them to focus on what I want from them. And that is serving each other and looking for ways to be kind to each other. And so it just kind of, they had so many acts of kindness they had to do every day. It was a lot more in the beginning for them to kind of train their brain, and they kind of had to check that off every single night. And it just allowed them to kind of, again, shift their thinking instead of seeing, well, how can I control him, or how can I get in front of him, or how can I do this, to this is an opportunity where I can serve this person. So I think that's what you were talking about, but you took it and you made it like 5 times better. So you probably.
I just did because I work so much and I could not keep up with who's on what, right? So I made cue cards with each of their names on them. Like, I had one, Samuel, and then Sage. So my daughter, because I have the twins that are 10, and my daughter, Sage, again, like, I call her like the alpha, right? Like, she wants to be in charge. I feel like she's always wanted to be in charge since she was in the womb. I always tell this story, and I tell this to them. I said, because his water broke first. And so, and her water was all, good. I'm like, see, you even kicked him out because you wanted to take over the space. And so, like, that's like the running joke. But it also seemed true. Like, she was always 2 steps ahead of him. So she would antagonize him a lot. Like, she would take his pacifier and, like, she would literally go into his crib. Like, we have this on the monitor, going into his crib, taking his pacifier out of his mouth, throwing it outside, flipping over. And he couldn't do that. So she's sitting there holding his pacifier, sucking on hers, and he's sitting there screaming. And we're like, what is going on? So, like, literally, this is how our life has been with the twins for the last 10 years. And so when I heard this, I said, okay, this is great. So, like, all of a sudden it was like, Sage, I'll get your milk for you. Sage, I'll clean your dishes for you. And I was like, oh my God, I love this. And the rule was that Sage could not say, no, I don't want that. You have to do something else. Like you had to accept whatever that person was doing for you. And so the problem was, is like when this would happen and I was like with a client or something, they would say, oh, I've already done it. And the other one would say, no, I didn't. No, you didn't. So I made those cue cards. So when Samuel actually did do an act of kindness, then he would have to give the name tag to her. So I could collect them so I can see that it was actually received. Because there was a lot of like, well, I did this. Like I let you sit on, like I let you touch me during watching TV, like the leg to leg. And so it was interesting. But you know what was most interesting is that when we would go through that and say, okay, I want you to tell me what this one meant. Like, what did you do for this card? What did you do for this card? So it was also, again, retraining the brain because I wanted them to revisit what is acts of kindness. And also, how did it make you feel to do that? How did it make you feel to get her glass of milk or to get his glass of milk for him or to open up the fridge or also to let him go before you? Like they always fight who's going to get in the car first. I'm like, there's two doors, two sides, guys. Like, just pick a side. Like, it doesn't matter, but they're always like, oh, because there's that competitiveness also. So, I mean, I think my daughter probably resonates with your daughter with that selfishness more so. But there's also that competitive side that like who can get there first, who gets to do it first, who. The other thing that we always fight about, well, we used to, not anymore, is who goes in the shower first. And like, does it matter? Like you both are showering every night. Like, so does it really matter? So I actually got this ball at the Dollar Tree and it was like, just like a dice, but it was like plain so I could write their names. So I wrote their names on it. And so we would like roll it and whoever's name it landed on would have to go. Well, that worked for about a week because my daughter's name kept showing up. And then they started fighting about who got to roll the dice because whoever had to go first got to roll the dice. Well, yeah, that didn't work so well. So that we scratched that idea, but it might work for somebody out there. So now we tried pick a number. That didn't work either. So what we did is now I have their names on my calendar. So there is no more arguing. Like whoever's name's on there is a person who's going that day. So that has brought peace for our showering. And literally we've gone 3 weeks without fighting over the shower. First 3 weeks ever, we've gone without fighting over who goes in the shower first. So that's like one of the things that I actually do now to take the contention out because that's the last thing that we want. Like when I am done with work, I want to love my kids. I want to have fun with them. I want to see like camaraderie in our house, not like constant fighting. And we have 6 kids, but my kids are definitely spread out 28, 23, 17, 15, and then 10-year-old twins. And my 17 and 15-year-old, they live with their mom. So they only come once in a while, like on vacation and stuff and every other weekend. So that's not too bad when we put the 15-year-old in the mix. It's not too, she's almost 15. But sometimes it's even with all 3 of them, then one feels left out, right? So is there any other things that you do besides the random act of kindness to get kind of peace in your home with the kids?
Yeah, I mean, one I feel like has worked really well because like my daughter, again, it is all about control for her. And so again, on the spot, I was just like, okay, Krissa, I said, you know what? I want you to pretend I'm giving you a piece of paper. Okay. And on this piece of paper has your name at the top. And this has everything to do about you. Okay. Now I'm going to give my piece of paper to Tristan and his name is at the top and has everything to do with him. So are you concerned with the things that are on Tristan's paper? I don't want you thinking anything that if it belongs on Tristan's paper, it's not on your paper. You need to think about what's on your paper and Tristan will think about what's on his paper because she'd always be like, well, Tristan's doing this and Tristan's doing that. And, like, she's always like trying to like, oh, you're doing this. And like, oh, Tristan, well, you can't have a second dessert. You can't do this. And I'm like, Krissa, is that on your paper? You know what I mean? And so what it is we have an agreement between the 2 of them that if one of them starts trying to do things that, control the other person that's on their paper, like the things that are about them and they have to take care of it. And it's between mom and that person. That they can say that like, hey, Trissa, you're working on my paper, right? And it's kind of what I like about it is it gives them that framework and that idea of like, okay, this is my box that I play in, you know what I mean? And I don't need to concern myself with another box, right? These are all the things in this box that I need to do. And Tristan has his things. And it's really easy for them to differentiate between, Krissa, you're doing Tristan's box again, you know what I mean? And vice versa. And they can also gently remind themselves like they're that. So that's been actually super effective, super great, because it's not just about me saying, hey, that's on Tristan's paper. They can tell each other that. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you're working on my paper right now. You know what I mean?
Oh, I love it. And that also is one of those independent skills also, because I'm going to tell you, one of the things that we need to learn as adults is stay in your lane. Like, stay in your lane in life, right? Like, don't get into other people's messes. Like, it's not your lane. Stay in your lane. So I love this. I love the teachings that you give this, because that's what it's teaching them, as they get older. Like, one of my jobs that I do is I'm an instructor for the Neuroencoding Institute, and I teach about, your niche. And it's like about staying in your lane. Don't think you can coach everybody, I mean, there's a lot of people I could coach on different things, but business coaching is not one of my things. I used to coach on relationships. I don't do that anymore. I literally stay with the parent-child, coaching to create a better bond between the parent and the child, to help children be seen and heard and understood, and help their parents have different ways of hearing them and seeing them. That's my lane. That's the lane I stay in. And so I feel like by saying, I'm going to try that this is your piece of paper, your piece of paper. And, I love that. So they can learn how to navigate about not worrying about other people's lives and business, and what that does for them in school as well. Right. Because when people are saying things about our kids, because kids are cruel, kids are mean. And, and some kids aren't mean and they say something, but my kid may be sensitive. Your kid may be sensitive. So the way they're giving it a meaning hurts their feelings. And so this too would be a great opportunity to say, well, like, what's on their piece of paper? Like, it has nothing to do with you. And what they said about you is on their paper, not you. That's not you. That's not your lane. It's not your piece of paper. So I feel like we can use that, not just with a sibling, but in other areas of their life too, especially when they're having some altercations or something, like with somebody in their classroom or something.
Well, I also think it allows them to recognize when they are working in either a paper or a box, either way, like whatever metaphor you want to use, but you're in someone else's box or their paper. And I think what I'd noticed the most was that I don't think Carissa kept realizing just how much she was working on someone else's box. You know what I mean? Like we're in their box and messing with their things. You know what I mean? And it was like, I think the more she's realizing, oh, I'm in his box again. Oh, I'm in his box again. It's that gentle correction which they don't fight about, which is kind of also really nice, because they can just say, hey, you're in my box. You know what I mean? Or you're on my paper, whatever one they're doing.
Right.
And it just kind of allows them to kind of redirect and recognize that they're doing that. You know what I mean? Because again, I think it's more about Carissa's personality. She just, the thing she wants to be most in life is a mom, because she wants to be the one in charge. So I think it's funny how that obviously tells you what she sees me, how she sees me, but she just wants to be in charge of everybody. And so I found that to be a very effective tool for that specific challenge that I'm having with her, where she likes to control other people.
Nice. Do you ever have issues with them like playing together? So I have some listeners out here and some clients also that they sometimes have challenges that their kids don't even like do anything together. I mean, if they have to, they will, but there's nothing that makes them want to engage with each other. Are any of your kids like that?
Well, we do a lot of things as a family. I mean, literally, we do a lot of things as a family. So they're used to playing together. I mean, and even as an extended family, I mean, we go camping, vacationing, even as extended families, and they're used to having all their cousins and just playing all together. So I honestly think, playing games as a family, board games, and, we do scripture study together as a family. We come together quite a bit, and we always come together for meal times, and we're constantly together. And my 13-year-old son, I mean, usually that's when they don't want to have their little brother hanging out with them, but he absolutely invites Tristan to all of his friend things. And he's very generous with his time with Tristan, and Tristan loves it. He wants, the 10-year-old looks up to the 13-year-old and wants to be with him and he thinks he's so great, and he's very generous with his time. I would say that there is, it's not always rainbows for sure. Not, you know what I mean? Like there definitely is times where, Tristan and Carissa, they don't play. They do play together quite a bit, but then sometimes they don't. But even a game that's Carissa has actually instigated lately, and I don't know if it's come from these other things that I've done, but she like, I'll be your servant today. she'll be his assistant or a servant that day, and she'll make his lunch and she'll make his breakfast and she'll, rub his feet. And it's just kind of funny, you know what I mean? That she and she loves this, job that she has, that he has her do. So, but they also interact and play together that way too. So, I think it actually comes from examples of the older kids. I think it comes from examples of you, and including them as a family. I mean, we go out and play bocce ball together. We honestly do a lot as a family and all together. And I think because they're used to already playing and hanging out together and being together, they actually enjoy that and can keep it up even on just individual terms.
Yeah. And I'm just gonna piggyback on that, because for me, that's what worked too, because we saw the kids. Well, I think COVID, there were so many blessings that we got from COVID. I know there's so many bad things that came from COVID worldwide, but for us personally, it gave us an opportunity, because the twins didn't get to see anybody else. And I kept saying, do you know how lucky you guys are? Do you know how lucky you are to have a playmate right now? Somebody that you can play games with. You can make tents and sleep in tents. You can have popcorn and movie night together, where there's a lot of kids that don't have that, or there's kids that have older siblings and they're doing their thing, or there's only children. I'm like, how lucky you are. And I kept using that. And I'm like, so I'd say, what could you guys do today together? What could be fun for you guys to do together? And I would help create that. But I think one of the things that solidified them actually starting to play really good together, and me and my husband were like, I haven't heard them argue. This is kind of interesting. What's going on? But we all started to engage more as a family. We started doing things more as a family, playing more board games together as a family, having more movie nights as a family. And when we started doing more family things, I think it also gave them wow, this person's not so bad. We can actually get along. Oh my gosh, I'm actually having fun with this person. Oh, I don't need mom and dad here to have fun with this little person. So I think that what you're saying,
it creates that relationship. And even though the mom is there, but it's they have their own relationship and they love each other and enjoy it, and they have such a fun time that it carries forward even when you're not as a group, as a family.
Right.
For sure.
Right. So, one of the things that you hit on was control. And I do believe that that's one of the reasons why siblings have that rivalry. And it's definitely that alpha, that who I want to be in charge, and I also see sometimes it's for attention too. Both of them, when they're craving that attention, it's 1 minute it's quiet, next minute it's total chaos. And it's what is going on? And it's not even, I don't know. It's not even about control. It's, I don't know. I feel sometimes it's really just about how can I get attention? So the one wants attention because they're not getting it. So they instigate the other one, right? And so they instigate the other one to start that fight just because they wanted attention. So, I don't know. Do you ever see anything else besides just the control that starts maybe triggers sometimes? There's a lot of blame that goes on too. You're wrong. I didn't say that.
Well, this might be a little taboo, and I apologize if this offends anyone, but I am a deep believer in God, and if you believe in God, I think there's opposition in all things, right? There's light and there's dark. So I do feel there are influences out there that really try to bring contention into the home and try to create strife and dispel, the peaceful spirit that's in the home. So I actually, and whether you believe in God or not, and whether you believe in Satan or not, the concept, I think, is still valid in the fact that when you have them recognize that there are even forces, whatever you want to call it, that are also trying to get you to hate your brother and you're going to fight, and that I do kind of some fun things around that as well. So it's hey, who are you listening to right now? And I kind of actually I'm all about visualizations, especially for kids. They all love to visualize. And and I call them Satan's angels. So however you want to look at that, but I'm there is Satan's angels whispering in your ear right now. And he is wanting you to engage in a way that is bringing contention in our home. So are you going to listen to that? Or are you going to not pay attention to that? Are you not going to follow that? You're going to make a better decision for yourself. You're going to make a better decision for your life in following the light. You know what I mean? We are light seekers, right? We are seeking and being lights for this world. And the only way to be a light is to keep the darkness out. And so you have to recognize when those dark forces are welling on you. You know what I mean? And like I said, it's a great visualization for them because they realize like, hey, yeah, I'm not going to listen to this joker over here who's just
Right.
trying to destroy my life. And we've done some really fun things about this one time. I mean, my two boys, they don't fight very often, but they were kind of fighting my 13-year-old and my 10-year-old. And I told them, I said, hey, they came in my office right here, and I said, hey, you know what? Again, we have Satan in our home right now, and you are my warriors. You know what I mean? You two are my warriors, and you are my generals, right? You're gonna kick Satan's butt, and you're gonna get him out of here. You know what I mean? And we're gonna give you this sword of truth. We're gonna put this helmet on, to block your brain. We got our breastplates. We kind of pretended to fit them up with their stuff. And I'm like, okay, you guys are all ready for battle. I want you to go out there and kick Satan's butt and tell him he's not welcome in our home and get him out of here. And so they're like, you got it, Mom. We won't let you down. You know what I mean? And so they go out and they go out and they're pretending, ninja fighting, and they're going out doing all out. And my 13-year-old comes back and he's like, the door's open into my office. And he's like, Mom, you're not going to want to see this. And he shuts the door, and they're like, oh, and he like flings himself against the door, and we could hear him. And we were just rolling in here. We were laughing so hard. But what that did is it did things that like, it allowed them to align together. It allowed them to fight. Like they're warriors of light. You know what I mean? And they are going to dispel the darkness in our home. And so now they have a common purpose and goal in mind, and they can do it in a playful way, and they can get that energy out, and they can get, so it was a really fun, playful way to do it. And you can kind of always come up with things on the spot to do that. But the idea is the same, where you're like, recognize that there is darkness going on right now, and recognize that you, and remember who you are. You have to remember that you are a light and lantern in this world, and you will bring light to others. And you have to constantly do that daily to keep your light shining. So that's something that is just kind of a belief and mindset that I filter things through and come up with things to bring light, to be acts of kindness, to be that lantern.
Right. And I love, love, love this. And I do believe in God. And so for me, that resonates. And even though like one of the listeners said, great advice. This applies to everyone, regardless of your beliefs. It does. Like, you don't have to name it Satan and God. You can just name it dark and light. You can name it whatever you want. Like, but the point is allowing our kids to know that our behaviors outside of us, our behaviors don't have to define us. And so if that behavior is coming in the dark, how do you repel it? How do you get rid of it? How can you, with your brother or sister, come together to say, no more, you're done. The dark is done. We're going to allow light in. And if light comes in, how would we behave, right? Like if we encompass the light inside of us, how would we become? So it doesn't necessarily have to be religious. I mean, one of the things that I love about you, Jacinda, is that you do have your strong belief. And I know that your values are based on your foundation of your religion, and you've brought it into your home, and it works for you. So, to our listeners out there that aren't religious, it's okay. And what foundation of beliefs are you bringing in to your home to lay for your children to follow? It's this allows us, like, and one of the things you said, Jacinda, is this is our training ground right now for our kids. That we're training them now for who they're going to be when they walk out that door. Not just when they walk out that door as an adult, but when they walk out that door to the world out there, because this is their safe haven. I mean, hopefully your home is your safe haven for your kids. It's the boundaries, right? Kids seek boundaries. And one of the things with, the sibling rivalry is, what boundaries are we setting for our kids? How could they feel safe? How could they feel safe in that moment to say what they need to say? I want my kids to be authentic. I don't want them to be anything that they're not. And I want them to learn how to appreciate the other siblings' ideas and wants and beliefs as well. Because, like you said in the beginning of this show, was all of our kids are different. They all have different personalities. I look at them as just like different colors in a crayon box, right? And my one child's going to give this to me, and the other child's going to give this to me. And when they give them all to me, how beautiful this picture is that I call my life. So how could we also role model that for our kids that aren't getting along? Is like, what can you appreciate them? And that's one of the strategies that I actually use with my kids too, is like, especially when they're in uproar, I let them come down from it. I give them their time and their space to just take a breath, separate from each other. That's like my biggest thing is, first of all, you go there, like go to your own separate corners. And then when they're all ready to discuss it, we come out and we talk about, like, tell me what's great about your brother. You need to tell me 3 things that's great about your brother. And like, no, but he did. I said, I know what he did, and I want to hear you. And that's big in my house. Like, my kids know they are heard. That is huge in my household. Everyone gets heard in this household. And I will say, I have heard you, and I will listen to you again. But first, I want you to tell me 3 things that are great about your brother. And then after she does that, I'll say, now I need 3 things that are great about your sister. Tell me 3 things that are great. And of course he'll be, but I will hear you too, but I want 3 things that are great about your sister. And all of a sudden, the big uproar that they had 5 minutes ago have totally neutralized at this point, because they got into that light. They got out of that darkness. They were able to see the greatness in each other and appreciate that. And then I say, so with that,
Well, as you know, gratitude is like,
huge.
sorry. So I was just gonna say, gratitude is definitely the biggest multiplier in the universe. And every time we can focus on gratitude, every time we can change the focus to gratitude, it changes the entire spirit in the house. You know what I mean? So, and I do something similar with my kids where we like, hey, go on timeout. You know what I mean? I want you to, because our timeout is so ingrained in them. You know, they know that they go on timeout, they think through what they could have done differently, what was good, what wasn't good, what they were going to do different next time. And so when we come out, we have that conversation. But you know, sometimes it's like, hey, I need you guys to go on timeout together, and you're going to hug each other. You know what I mean? For a minute. And then I said, okay, I want you to look into your eyes, and I want you to say how much you love that person, and or I want you to tell them how much was something, again, like you were saying, was something you appreciate about that person. And a lot of times they are laughing by this point. You're like, and it's like the 2 boys. I'm like, Tristan, I want you to look into Xander's big, beautiful blue eyes and tell him how much you just love the crap out of him. You know what I mean? And they're laughing. You know what I mean? It's because it's about being playful. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be something serious. It doesn't have to be like, I think my connection's getting crappy. Sorry.
That's okay.
Can you hear me still?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. So, I mean,
okay.
All of these are
similar thing, but yeah, just
right. And that's what it is. It's the gratitude, right? And so when you bring gratitude, it neutralizes the darkness, if you would, because the gratitude is the light, you know. And one of our listeners said every parent needs to have a moral compass. It needs to be discussed between spouses in order to be on the same page. And I agree with that. Like, my husband and I, we're very spiritual people, and we always talk about gratitude. Like, gratitude is our foundation. You know, at night when we do our prayers, and we're grateful. What are you grateful for today? What are you grateful for in your life? And again, it's like setting that foundation. So we're just a few minutes. Jacinda, is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners that, you know, are having any golden nuggets you can tell them if they're having that challenge, that contention, that they just want that peace in their house with their kids always kind of fighting and arguing?
Well, I guess to put it simply is to look for the ways to bring light into your life, like to bring light into the home and filter it that way, and just think like a coach. But I also I just know so many parents, and I just want to say this too. If you're on this program, it's because you're looking for ways to be better. And there's so many people that don't. And the fact that you're even on here, you should give yourself some grace. You know what I mean? You're being the best parent you know how to be, and keep with it. You know what I mean? They don't come with instruction manuals, and we have to figure it out, unfortunately. But you're actually going some other places to see different plays that you can put into your playbook as a coach, and different ways to maybe approach a situation and see what works and what doesn't work for your individual child and your individual households and your individual personalities. And so the fact that you're even here says a lot about you as a parent, and just keep up the amazing work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That was so done with grace. Like, absolutely give yourself grace. You know, there is one question. One of our listeners asked, do you find these behaviors more in son versus daughter? For me personally, this is my first time having a son and daughter being raised together. So I find it more equally. I would say that my daughter, when she was younger, would be more the instigator. And now I feel it's kind of equal. What about you, Jacinda? Jacinda, I don't know if she can hear us, if she's there.
Yeah, well, I don't, you froze on me, but I was just going to say, I think it really depends on the personality of the child. You know what I mean? So the personality of the child is really going to be indicative rather than the sex, because there's some girls are more drama queens and some boys are more testosterone going on. And some, like my 13-year-old is he's a boy, but he's just incredibly kind little boy. And same with my daughter, but my two younger ones are just different personalities. So I definitely see, my 10-year-old is a perfection complex. And so he's constantly, that's been some challenges that we're trying to go, overcome. So I think it just kind of depends on the personality.
Right, right. Well, thank you so much, Jacinda, for being here and being with us. And as I always say, get curious, not critical. I think this is a time for us to explore our child's needs through their eyes, not ours. They're kids, their brains develop differently than ours at this point, and to really understand where they're coming from in that moment. And like Jacinda said, just give yourself some grace. Thank you guys so much for being a part of our show today. This show can be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it.